Hello, everyone. And I am Crow, and this is Secret of Mana. This is a game that's near and dear to my heart as far as speedrunning goes. I've been speedrunning it on and off for, I want to say, close to 8 years now. And this is my favorite category. I'm going to be playing the one controller category of this game. So, a little bit of introduction to the setup here. I am playing on emulator. The reason for that is that my SNES recently broke, unfortunately. For the recent SGDQ run that I did of this game, of this category, I was able to borrow a SNES from a coworker of mine. I have since returned it, so that's the reason for the emulator today. This game, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is an action RPG for the SNES by Squaresoft. It frequently shows up on best of SNES game lists. There is a bit of a lengthy cutscene at the beginning, so that'll give me a little bit more time to talk about it. For now, I'll just note that I'm choosing a single letter long name because this is one of those games that displays text one letter at a time. And we'll go ahead and get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now. All right. So the one controller category seems like an odd category to specify, but as it turns out, a popular way to speedrun this game right now is to pick up multiple controllers in your hand and kind of juggle them in order to make use of the multiplayer aspect of this game and enable yourself to either use glitches you otherwise wouldn't have access to, or to get access to better versions of the glitches that you will see in this run here. This run is a true one-player speed run. The overall statement about the category is that you will see a much wider variety of strategies and a much wider variety of glitches in this run here, because the one that is the best is not always the best compared to the multiple controller run. So if you have seen this run before, done by Yakimov or Stinger or Zeal or any of the other many runners out there, you will see something a little bit different here. So we start this Mana series game, as many of the games here do, by falling down a waterfall. So, of course, there's no fall damage. Why would there ever be fall damage? But we need to pick up something in order to cut our way through some bushes that are blocking my path to exit the region. And it just so happens that the mana sword is nearby. Picking up the sword winds up being the big plot event that gets everything in motion. Monsters are released to try to reclaim the power of mana for nature or something like that. The Empire begins in earnest its quest to undo all the seals on the mana seeds and unleash the mana fortress, all that stuff. We also see a ghost who turns out to be our father, which is something we would learn if we went to the biggest plot point of the game, which we're not going to. There are lots of glitches in this game. The joke is that running this game and trying to play this game glitchless results in more glitches being found than whenever we're actually glitch hunting. Anyway, combat in this game is that of an action RPG. You will see numbers show up on enemies to indicate how much damage I dealt to them, which is certainly helpful. These ray bites have 20 HP. I am defeating them not because I want the standard experience and gold allotment that every RPG gives, but instead because I want to get weapon experience. This game is unique in that or relatively unique, in that each individual weapon type and each individual element of magic has a character-specific experience level that is gained. So there are a total of 8 different classes of weapons. Each time you gain a weapon level, you gain one more tier of experience that you're allowed to get with that weapon type. Sorry. Let me try that again. Each tier of experience you get with a particular weapon gives you another tier of charging that you can do for using the weapon as a more powerful attack that takes longer to set up. You'll see that done in the intended fashion in the boss that follows the one we're about to do here. And then you'll see it in a rather unintended fashion for many enemies after that. For now, there is a tutorial boss. This is the Mantis Ant. If I somehow die here, that's actually fine. The guy who just popped out of the bar, sorry, cafe, this is a Squaresoft game from the SNES era, will revive you. Unfortunately, I had a couple of late swings there. I'm going to blame the emulator being a slightly different amount of input lag than what I'm used to playing the game. That, of course, is, I'm sure, not the case, but whatever. Gives me something to complain about. This boss, if you try to do anything fancy, will often be cruel in response. If you just man up and stand directly in front of it and trade hits, that turns out to usually be the fastest and safest strategy. If you try to go to the side, he'll specifically attack you with the particular scythe that you are closer to. If you try to run away down below him, he'll attack you with various ranged attacks that are extremely powerful and also very slow animations. So I need to make sure not to stand too far away from him while I try to just barely graze him with the edge of my sword's hitbox. My sword can either do a swinging attack or a stabbing attack. In the first game of this series, you could actually choose which one you got by either moving or not moving as you are swinging your weapon. However, in this game, the way it works is if you are very close to an enemy, there is a 50% chance that your attack will be a stabbing attack instead of the swing. As it turns out, kind of counterintuitively, the stab attack is both slower and shorter ranged than the swing. So I always want to stay far enough away to get the swing attack if I can. For now, the villagers aren't so happy about the fact that monsters are swarming and trying to get the sword away from the boy. So he is regarded as a liability and kicked out. I could pick up a 50 gold chest, which if I were doing a glitchless run, I would totally do that before leaving the area. However, since I will be using glitches, I've got some shenanigans. I'm going to be manufacturing my own money. So that weapon skill level there is exactly what I want. That was received at exactly the time I want it, because I'm soon going to get another weapon. I'm going to try to get some weapon experience on that one. The weapons other than the sword are weapons I never want to see weapon levels on for the boy, because there's kind of a strange game mechanic going on for the final boss. That's right, I'm already doing things to prepare for the final boss. During that fight, you are given access to the fully revived form of the Mana Sword. As long as the mana magic buff is active, you do bonus damage with the boy holding the sword based on the total weapon experience he has collected across all weapons. However, partial experience towards a weapon level counts 8 times as much as would make logical sense, due to what I think is an order of operations oversight by the developers. So in the end, by getting a few weapons close to but not quite at level 1 experience, and also stacking a bunch of other buffs on the boys' attacks, I will be able to do 999 damage strikes without bothering with the overcharge glitch at all. So that's going to be a big benefit once we get there. As for what I'm doing here, this is a pretty long plot segment where the game tells you what your basic goal as the hero of the sword is. So Gemma, the guy who would have helped us before if we died, he wants us to upgrade the sword by taking the energy we pulled out of the boss that we slew a little bit ago, and then take it to a blacksmith with the dwarves over in Gaia's Navel. We'll do that pretty soon. Luca, meanwhile, wants us to seal all 8 of the elemental mana seeds scattered throughout the world. She also here allows us to save the game, which I will immediately take advantage of. In this game, a save file remembers not where you were when you created the save, but instead where you were when you entered the room where you made the save. So because of that, I was able to get out of the room pretty quick by going ahead and using the LR select start combination of buttons in order to immediately do a reset. We'll make further use of that later on, but for now, that'll be that. Waiting a moment here so that this Raybite up here can spawn. This game only allows 3 entities to be on screen at once, except in towns. Sometimes it'll go higher in towns. But because the Potos Field region always has this little critter called a high stepper spawned, that means that that region can only have 2 enemies at any given time. So at this point, we take what is clearly the safest form of travel, which is intercontinental ballistic travel. Just launch ourselves out of a cannon and go straight to Gaia's Navel, which is where Gemma wanted us to go. And before we get on with meeting with the dwarves, first we'll meet with this cat. He is Nico, and he is a merchant who charges double the usual price for everything you get from him. I will buy 2 things, look at the second one, and then when I go into the selling menu here, notice that the second item is still what I'm looking at. It still wants me to look at the second item, but there aren't 2 items in my inventory. So because the game assumes you can only lose 1 item at a time, if I fill the memory with the icons of the buying menu, it will give me all but 1 of the buying menu icons, even though there's nothing left in my inventory. So the net result of this is that I was able to sell nothing. As it turns out, if you sell nothing, it becomes something. Specifically, a glitched item called Blat. If you sell a multiple of 8 Blats, it turns into nothing again. So that nothing winds up in these cases where I'm reselling to finish off my sale of a group of 8. This is causing the game to now have an empty spot in the inventory in front of these fairy walnuts. Fairy walnuts restore MP. MP can be used to deal damage to enemies. So effectively, I'm giving myself a humongous amount of ammunition by giving myself 3 slots devoted to walnuts where normally you can only have 1. This game only allows you to hold a maximum of 4 of any individual type of weapon of item in your inventory normally, but because I have 3 slots now, I should be able to go up to 12. We're actually going to make that 24 in a little bit here by doing some more shenanigans on top of what we've already done. Take a little bit of a break here to hold a balloon because that Blat said so. Just by coincidence, the enemies in this area happen to have the same name as the glitched item I sold. That's the same regardless of where I initiate the glitch. I had to be a little bit careful there because, that was odd. That guy should have been hit also. Oh well. Getting hit by any enemy when you only have one party member is scary. Eventually, we will have a total of 3 party members. And once we do, if we are in trouble, we can just hit select in order to take control of a different party member and go from there. However, an individual party member can easily be stun locked. And I was a little afraid that might happen there, but it did not. This game gets a little bit easier as the game goes on, honestly, because the game gives you more and more options unlocked, and each new option really adds a lot, as long as you know how to make good use of them. All right, here we go. So I am killing enough goblins here that by the end I should have close to 90% progress towards gaining a spear weapon level, which, for the reasons I described a little bit ago, and we'll summarize when we're closer to the payoff, is... There we go. I want to not quite get the weapon levels. So hitting that last skull there finally revealed the dwarf village. See a bunch of dwarves running around here. As with any RPG of this era, the NPCs can totally get in my way. Hopefully it won't be too bad. This is Watts, the blacksmith. He is the one who will forge our weaponry if we choose to. We will forge the sword 2 times. Only the first time is mandatory. The second time is just for a slight benefit later on. So I now need to do a little bit more shopping on top of that, on top of what I've already done. This shop has the best equipment of anything in the early game. In particular, the power wrist item that I'm buying way too many of at this point gives you +5 strength in addition to just being a decent defensive item. 1, 2, 3. So I'm buying a whole bunch more equipment than I actually require here. I actually bought the hats in the opposite order than I usually do. It shouldn't matter, but it may throw off my muscle memory on some of the menuing. Anyway, the reason I bought way too much stuff was because I want to throw it out, oddly enough. If you throw out something while you are wearing it, the game erroneously searches your memory for something that it thinks is the item that needs to be unequipped after it's already been deleted. The way in which it does that is entirely wrong and winds up searching for a place in the memory based on the horizontal position on the screen of the trash can's icon. The trash can icon can be controlled by choosing where you're standing because of these nifty ring-based menu systems. So, in the end, I told the game to search memory corresponding to my consumable items, as if it were weapon data. Sorry, not weapon data, armor data. To look for something that the boy should unequip. As it turns out, the way that the game flags that you have 2 of a consumable item is the same way that it flags that the boy has that piece of armor equipped. So, by unequipping my inventory, I have effectively given myself 0 of all of those items I purchased before. Well, all the items I bought 2 of before, I guess I should say. So now I have 0 of them. Whenever I use them, they will overflow to 7 because this game uses a 3-bit unsigned integer for that, which is kind of a strange data structure, but hey, they can do what they want, I guess. Anyway, this is Tropicalo now. Tropicalo is a cycle-based boss. He will burrow into the ground, unload an attack afterward, and then burrow again after I've hit him. I will be able to hit him 2 times as long as I hit him with the right timing as he is doing his first attack after unburrowing. If I miss my timing at any point, he will only give me 1 hit per cycle for the entire rest of the fight, so it's pretty important that I keep up with things. There are 2 ways to avoid hits from the pumpkins. Because he's been spawning on the sides for this entire battle here, I've been using the positioning near the wall to avoid the damage. Specifically, the reason I'm not taking hits is because at the moment the pumpkin is exploding. Most of the time, it is considered to be on the high ground while I'm on the low ground, and those two regions are kept separate from each other as far as hitboxes are concerned. The other way to avoid the pumpkin, which is useful if he spawns in the bottom, is to let the pumpkin bomb explode near you, then run away from the explosion. If you succeed at that, because there's a delay between the explosion animation and the actual damage, you can get out of the range of the damage before the explosion is through. That method is a little trickier to pull off, but honestly more reliable if you're good at it. At this point, I'm picking up my next party member. This is the Sprite. For the moment, I do not have any sort of magic at my disposal. We'll get that before too long. But for the moment, the Sprite is just worse than the boy in every way. He has less HP at a given level, less strength at a given level, less defense in a given level. Everything is worse. We do get a couple of new weapons, but they're not so great. Soon we will also get an axe from Watts here. And that will be a somewhat decent weapon, but for now the boomerang is kind of bad. So let's have the Sprite use the sword instead. But wait, that means that the sword isn't available for the boy. That's no good. Well, let's give the boy a sword too. We'll do the same equipment deletion trick that I did before, this time standing in a different place on the screen, which I used the stairs in order to line myself up to stand in the right spot. And by doing that, I caused the game to search the weapon inventory for something that it thought the Sprite had equipped. So the Sprite unequipped the sword, which is not a thing in this game. So if you ask the Sprite, hey, what weapon do you have? The Sprite still knows, I have the sword. But if you ask the sword, hey, who has you equipped? It doesn't know. So in that case, there's nothing stopping the boy from picking up the sword. So now we have 2 swords. And the Sprite will keep that sword equipped for the entire rest of the game, which will make it very convenient for me to eventually allow him to also participate in the weapon overcharge glitch, which we will make use of in a while. For now, I need to get some more weapon experience. In order to make use of the aforementioned weapon overcharge glitch, I will need to get this boy up to level 2 experience on the sword. So this means I will need to get a bunch of experience. You may notice that I've been intentionally donating some of these kills to the Sprite, going slightly out of my way to make that happen. Reason for this is that right now the boy is considered over-leveled compared to the flower enemies, and therefore does not get full experience for taking them out. No! Girl! Get... Oh, dear. The girl is present in this battle, but her attacks don't actually help. So pretty consistently, she's just annoying. If both of these guys try to heal each other at once, that's actually good. But if only one heals the other, then I can't stack damage reliably like you saw me do there. Those werewolves are very scary, by the way. If you don't have a full set of equipment, they hit really hard. Hidden little mechanic to try to make the early game a lot easier if you ever play this game casually. This game penalizes you really harshly on your overall defense usefulness if you don't have a full set of equipment. If you don't have a full set of equipment, then your character is considered as having a low evasion rating. And your evasion rating scales the overall effectiveness of your total defense. So whereas your character is supposed to have a baseline defense power based on the fact that they just are a character and have a stamina stat, that stamina stat will not be considered if you don't have a hat on and an arm equipment on. You only come default with a piece of body armor equipped. So as soon as you can, get, even if it's just the lowest tier of stuff, get something on everyone's head, get something on everyone's arms, and that will make you much more durable for the early game. Anyway, at this point we're going through LNA's forest. We needed the axe to get through a portion of it. It is possible to use a glitch in order to skip picking up the girl there, which is in some ways faster. Unfortunately, though, it also is ridiculously dangerous to the point where I don't even do it in, world record attempts, because having too few party members in the one controller speedrun allows certain bosses to just obliterate you. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. I don't normally get to kill 3 enemies in that pack there. This does actually put me slightly ahead of schedule as far as getting weapon experience onto the boy is concerned. I am going to assume that this means I can just kill the chairs and leave it at that and not have to also defeat some enemies I would sometimes kill that I'll point out later because they're sort of along the way, but still take some time to knock out. This is almost what I want, but not quite. They are synced up, which is good, but they were also... okay, we're good. They were also kind of spread out, so I couldn't push them both at the same time, but we got through. I don't want to kill those werewolves. You saw how long it takes to kill the werewolves, even if you get pretty good RNG about their healing. And I just don't want to deal with that. So at this point, we rescue some of the troopers that were trying to take down the queen... Not the queen, what am I talking about? The witch earlier. This is LNA, the witch's castle, and once upon a time she was a good witch, but now she's a bad witch. So we'll need to take her out and make her see the error of her ways. So I'll do a lot of character swapping here in order to stack damage optimally. There we go. That sound effect there indicates I got the weapon level for the boy, which is what I need to do the big glitch for this particular battle. So this is Spiky Tiger. A lot of people will remember this as being the hardest fight in the game, or at least the first fight in the game that makes them really pull their hair out. This is the last difficult fight before the game gives you access to magic, and magic makes this game much easier to work with. You can heal if you need to. You can deal damage to the enemy in a way that stops the enemy from doing anything. There's just lots of things that are good about it. We are going to one-shot Spiky if he cooperates. Let's try to make that happen. Okay, so let's see. I do not need to do that. That's good. Switch to the action grid. This is the grid where you can customize the behavior of your AI-controlled characters. So at this point, I'm going to be very indecisive, apparently, about which charge level I want the boy to use. And then I'm just going to cause the Spiky Tiger to inexplicably explode. So, what happened there? Well, if you tell an AI character to only charge up to level 1, even if they have the ability technically to go up to level 2, they will stop at level 1. They will act as if level 1 is truly the highest level of charging that they can possibly do with their weapon. So, if I go to level 1 and then to level 2, at that moment, the game says, oh, hey, your charging bar is full, and you're trying to go up to level 2? Well, you're at level 2 now. Then I reverse the process. At that point, I'm already at level 2, but I'm trying to charge up to level 1, which is now a state where I have the maximum smaller than the current, which is never supposed to happen, and the game just does not account for it properly. So in the end, at every moment that the game checks your overall charging state, it will tick up another charge level. So I unleashed an attack there that was like charge level 30 or 40 or so. Put things in perspective, at the end of the game, if you spend somewhere around a minute just sitting there charging up your next attack, that gives you a level 8 attack. So that was wildly more powerful than any attack you should ever be able to perform would be. And so I was able to one-shot Spiky Tiger with it. There are some limitations to this. In order for this to work, my AI characters have to actually participate in trying to fight, which, if you've played this game, you should know is not something you can rely on. The AI characters are notoriously kind of dumb, which, to be fair, this is playing on the SNES. The SNES has a lot of good features, but a fast CPU is not one of them. The SNES excelled because of its pretty good picture processing unit and sound card. Not so much because the CPU itself was good. So we'll do this trick once again. This is the Tonpole. If you deal a normal amount of damage to this guy, he will eventually transform into the Biting Lizard, which is the little critter I use as my avatar on most sites. However, if you defeat him in one attack, then he doesn't even get to transform. And so now we have rescued Undyne, who is in trouble under attack by these monsters. And so now she gives us her powers. This is the first of the elemental spirits we have unlocked. Each elemental spirit will give each of my two spellcasting characters a set of 3 new spells they can use. The freeze spell that the sprite just got happens to be the highest damage spell in the game, basically. Most of the high damage spells have the same total damage they deal. However, freeze only costs 2 MP, whereas a lot of the other such spells like Thunderbolt or Exploder, those cost 4. So just the sheer MP efficiency is pretty insane. So at this point, I'm going to start... it didn't quite go to plan, but whatever, we got there. At this point, I'm going to start working on weapon experience for the boy. No flower, which means there will be a raid bite, which means I need to delay to make the raid bite above spawn. There we go. And off to Gaia's Navel again. Once again, I am getting weapon experience in order to make the final boss easier to defeat, because the final boss, the weapon you use against the final boss, the Mana Sword, is made more powerful based on the weapon experience the boy has across all of his various sources. And it overcounts partial weapon experience towards a level. So if I kind of level up a bunch of different weapons, that winds up giving me a huge amount of bonus for the final fight. I expect to be doing 999 damage strikes, which is this game's cap for damage. You cannot, with an individual instance of damage, ever do more than 999. And in some cases, the cap is actually lower than that. I'll talk about that whenever it matters. For now, I'm returning to the Dwarf Village because this room, which was technically accessible before but not useful until now, has a crystal orb in it that leads to a dungeon I need to clear. In order to open the crystal orb, I need to use that freeze spell I just got. Now I have it, so now I can deal with it. So at this point, I'm going to try to sneak through here without... Yes, sweet. By keeping the goblins over there spawned, I was able to prevent a green drop that normally blocks the path towards the button from spawning. This does wind up meaning that I don't get to remove that blat there. That blat could cast Balloon. It's not a huge deal if it does, but somewhat annoying. Anyway, the enemy I normally practice freeze against didn't spawn there, so instead I'm going to practice it against that enemy up there. Okay. This is just because I need to restore the sprite's MP at some point anyway. So I may as well burn the rest of it on practice beforehand. Here I'm going to do what I call a swap dash. Swap characters and dash again. The reason that works is that although running costs stamina, your allies do not have to spend stamina in their attempts to follow you. So if you swap control over to one of your allies, they are ready to do another dash even if you are not. This is the first boss we're going to defeat with magic. If you try to fight this guy with physical attacks, he will tend to just kind of disappear for a while. As long as he has disappeared, he is completely invulnerable, and more to the point, your allies will not try to charge up their weapons against an enemy that is invulnerable in that fashion. I did a minor trick here using my walnuts. If you use a walnut on a character, eventually a green number 50 will show up on them, which indicates that they have recovered 50 MP. Of course, my maximum is less than that, but eventually that'll be closer to what I actually have. Anyway, there is a very brief delay between whenever you actually receive the MP and whenever you get the green numbers that stun you. If you pause during that delay, you can start spending your next set of MP before you've been stunned because you received the previous. So this allowed me to cast 8 freezes all in sequence without the enemy getting any opportunity to do anything in between. If you do a glitchless speedrun of this game, that will frequently hinge a lot on chain casting magic. There will be very few cases where you do anything else. So at this point, I am sealing another mana seed. I'm now at 2 sealed seeds. There's a total of 8. I am supposed to seal all of them, or at least try. I'm actually only going to go up to 6. In fact, I could have skipped the one right there if I wanted. However, there are actually game mechanic benefits for taking the time out and sealing the seed. Specifically, there is a damage bonus associated with all hits you score, as long as it's a high damage roll instead of a low damage roll. All high damage roll attacks, be it with a weapon or with magic, will be increased by the square of the number of seeds you have sealed. Furthermore, that did not go the way I wanted it to. That's actually a pretty late level up on the Sprite's sword. Anyway, furthermore, each sealed mana seed gives you another level that you can level up your magic elements to. So whereas before I was casting level 0 freezes, working towards getting level 1, at this point, I could make some progress towards getting level 2 freeze. I actually do not know a whole lot about Secret of Evermore. I'm seeing a question in chat about the UI differences. I can multi-target magic, however, it is pretty punishing to do so, particularly against targets that have good magic defense. The problem is that your damage is split first, then their magic defense is subtracted. So if you split your damage across 3 targets, you are effectively tripling their magic defense. By the end of the game, somewhere around 75% of my damage that I'm trying to score against a single target is going to be blocked by their magic defense, to put things in perspective. Generally speaking, multi-targeting spells will do no damage. You're allowed to do it, though, and I will do it in cases where what I really want to do is just stop enemies in their tracks. But as far as actually defeating enemies is concerned, not very helpful. Going to dash diagonally into the wall here, this causes my AIs to attack that sword at the exact correct moment so that it doesn't become a problem. The sword is invulnerable while it's coming off of its stand, so there's kind of a narrow opportunity to deal with that. In this room here, I'm going to dash diagonally up and left into the wall. This prevents an enemy that would spawn at the top of the stairs from appearing, and that enemy spawns more enemies, and it makes it really hard to get into the stairs themselves. The reason that stops enemies from spawning is a bit of a glitch in the way this game handles... Oh, this is not working out. Okay, we're through. A bit of a glitch in the way this game handles predicting which enemies to spawn. It always spawns enemies off-screen, and it tries to do so in the direction you're traveling. However, when you are traveling diagonally, the game does not correctly understand which direction you're going. Oh, I see. You will see something similar to that. You'll see this game's equivalent to, we call it chain casting, against this boss here, in fact. In fact, you'll see it against most bosses that I fight. That I fight with magic, I should say. And it's kind of a 50-50 split whether I use magic or the weapon overcharge glitch against enemies. I could use the overcharge glitch against this boss here. However, this boss frequently closes its eyes, and it's kind of hard, not impossible, but kind of hard to get your allies to lock on to the eye while it's open instead of while it's closed. So you see here, I'm casting a whole bunch of spells in rapid succession. In order to do this, I have to be using... I have to be controlling a character other than the one that's doing magic, because there's a cooldown animation after the spell cast. However, if you're on a separate character, you can tell the character to start casting even during that cooldown. I also just made use of kind of a strange quirk in the way this game works, where if you are chain casting, the amount of time it takes for you to get MP after giving them a walnut during the chain cast depends on whether the second to last spell you cast in the set had a long or a short casting animation. Because the second to last spell I cast in each of those sets happens to be Gem Missile, whose animation is fairly long, whereas I started and ended the fight with a cast of Earth Slide, which is more powerful but has a shorter animation. That meant that I received my MP sooner, and with that sooner arrival, it's so close to instant that I was able to do the preemptive MP usage glitch I mentioned before a lot more reliably than I otherwise could. Regarding the history of Secret of Evermore, as I understand it, Secret of Evermore was developed by Square of America, like a completely different team than the Mana series had. And it was, I think, Square of America's first project. And it was intentionally made as a Secret of Mana clone as far as UI is concerned. So the similarities are intentional, even though the games themselves are technically unrelated. The Raybite didn't spawn. If the Raybite spawns there, I can kill it. Okay, I was worried the flower didn't spawn. It just wasn't in the particular nook I remembered it being. Ooh, didn't get the Raybite over here either. That's a little unfortunate. If I miss too many enemies, I won't be able to do 999 damage strikes against the final boss, which will reduce the odds that I will get a one-cycle victory against it. If I don't get a one-cycle, it'll be like a 2-minute loss. A little disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. Far worse things commonly happen in marathon runs. Anyway, at this point we're returning to Gaia's Navel. I could have walked here. There is a path from Pandora that swings by a village we're never even going to approach in this run, which is called Kippo Village. Incidentally, one of very few places in the game where you can acquire the Kung Fu dress, which is the better armor choice for the girl at this phase of the game, but it's too much of a detour for me to possibly care. Especially since anytime the girl would be in danger, I'm going to instead be having the girl use a barrel to protect herself. So this fight here happens to be one of those fights where I will do that. I did use a barrel during the Spiky Tiger fight, but I never really talked about what it did. The barrel makes you invulnerable to all physical damage. Also, normal enemies, not bosses, but normal enemies will ignore you so long as you have a barrel on. If any player-controlled character presses B, which is the usual attack button, while any character has a barrel on, all those barrels will go away. So there is some limitation to what you can achieve with it. Oh, right, I need to swap the boy, and I should have swapped him earlier. The fact that I didn't may wind up giving Kilroy more opportunities to be a jerk. Hopefully he won't be. So, Kilroy here can turn characters into Moogles with his hammers. He can either do a directional attack, which the girl will distract, or he can do a spinning attack like you saw there, which could have hit the boy, but the boy got in there first, which I am 100% down with, and I managed to defeat him. I also managed to pull off another glitch that saves like 2 seconds, which we call the whiteout skip. If you've been paying attention to the boss explosion sequence, you may notice that what we saw there wasn't that. So we skipped a significant portion of the post-boss sequence by simply stepping on one of the exit tiles for the room such that that overrode that portion of the event. I think if you tried to do this in the Japanese version, you'd get a soft lock. There's actually quite a few things that'll result in a soft lock in the Japanese version, which is one of the reasons we don't do that. There are a number of action RPGs and such games that prefer the Japanese version, especially because the text usually scrolls faster. This game here, however, is not one like that. We greatly prefer the English version because post-boss, if you disown a boss defeated event, the game fails to advance past it. This happens if you swap control of characters during the boss fight in particular ways, which are very common to do if you're aggressively taking control of the characters you want during a boss fight. As I understand it, the Japanese release of this game literally was sold next to an apology regarding that particular glitch. These fish are kind of jerks. We saw them earlier. Last time they weren't a problem, but sometimes they are, and this time they were. That low amount of HP left on the sprite could be a problem. Oh, I was supposed to drop a safety save before going into this fight. Okay, in lieu of a safety save, I'm going to do some safety healing. Going to a safety save from here is really quite a detour. I'm sure it'll be fine. There's nothing that could possibly go wrong here, right? This is Jabberwocky. If he wants to, he can cast a lot of spells. Somewhere around like 90% of the time that he could take an action, he just doesn't. And most of the actions that he takes aren't actually all that dangerous. However, if he chooses to both take an action and to cast specifically the Acid Rain spell too many times in a row, I could just die without any hope of doing anything about that fact. So here's hoping that doesn't happen. I am going to set up the weapon overcharge glitch while keeping the boss in check using magic. And I succeeded in doing the thing that's supposed to keep this fight relatively safe. But unfortunately, the boss got 2 dodge rolls in a row. This is one of several bosses in the game that has the ability, in fact, nearly all bosses from here on out, have the ability to just ignore the damage you execute against it, just through random chance. Specifically, this is for physical attacks. Magic always hits. So, he unfortunately dodged both of my first strikes. You may ask, why did I get 2 shots at the weapon overcharge glitch? Well, the way that works is if you swap control from the sprite to the boy, that will necessarily cause the overcharge to start coming out, right? Because you aren't holding the B button to keep up the charge. However, if you immediately press the B button afterward, you can get in there in between when the attack is released and whenever the game actually removes the charged state. And this allows you then to release the attack while still retaining it for a second try. The multiple controller run, one of the biggest advantages that it gets, aside from just being able to select which overcharge attack animation you get rather than getting something that looks random and may be slow, it also gets to do that buffered attack, they call it, completely for free. There is no limitation of any sort on that. And I forgot to do something before doing the Stone Saber, which is going to suck. I'm going to have to recast Stone Saber in a bit here. Stone Saber causes enemies to... Get over here, Sprite. Sprite, come on! The AI is not very good at getting around obstacles. Enemies that have been hit by Stone Saber have a 75% chance to be petrified. Petrified enemies are not only stunned, they also lose half of their HP as they are petrified and then take damage from the attack itself. So that winds up being the most reliable way to fight normal enemies. So this region I'm coming up on here is kind of the last convenient place to fight normal enemies. After this point, enemies are generally going to be too difficult to fight and or are going to have evasion ratings such that my attacks are not guaranteed to even hit. So I will donate kills to the boy by kind of cycling through my characters here. And I'm giving the boy whip experience. The whip is a pretty good weapon. I was expecting that to kill, but I got a really low damage roll, so it didn't happen. Okay. So at this point, I am going to defeat these pebblers who have taken over the Moogles' village. You have to pay a little attention to whether the last of the 3 pebblers arrives or not. Once it arrives on screen, it will actually be the default target, which is kind of annoying. Didn't quite get the timing right on that. I was not in the regime there where I had the fast MP restore, so getting the timing right on preemptive MP usage in that scenario is kind of tricky. At this point, because of the mistake I made earlier, I only have the MP for 1 more Stone Saber. Normally I would do a Stone Saber at the end of the upcoming boss fight, but that's not going to happen. The upcoming boss is Springbeak, who is weak against Gnome's magic, which conveniently I've gotten a little bit of experience for, between stunning Jabberwocky with Gnome's magic and also the wall face fight that I took with magic instead of physical attacks. Between those various things, I have gotten myself... Oh, that's going to be annoying. The boy is currently confused. Confusion in this game has the hilarious effect of reversing your controls for its duration. This includes your controls whenever you are in the menus, which is really quite confusing, which I suppose is what they were going for. Anyway, let's go ahead and take this guy out. Same sort of logic as far as making sure that the middle part of my spell set consists of gem missiles, and the tail ends consist of the stronger but faster animation Earth Slide spell. That should do it. I may have to do one more cast, but it's unlucky if I do. It would involve a pretty bad set of damage rolls. Defeating Springbeak with physical attacks instead of magic, which may become likely in a casual run if you don't have any walnuts here, because there's no inns in this region. The only source of MP restoration is if you buy walnuts off of Nico, who sells them for 1,000 gold, which is absurdly large of an investment for this phase of the game. So if you didn't buy walnuts in order to restore MP, and you also didn't return home to restore MP after solving the small puzzle that I went through to get into the Sprite's village, then you would probably have to use physical attacks, at which point my suggestion is to use projectile weapons. The problem is that Springbeak's titular beak happens to be a shield. If any part of your weapon strike hits his beak, then your entire attack is negated. Furthermore, during boss fights, the size of the hitboxes of your weapons is doubled. So even if it doesn't look like you hit the beak, a lot of the time you actually did. Once again, I'm going to use the rope and then do an event. This time I'm talking to the Mana Seed. Amusingly, if the Mana Seed is not spinning, you can talk to it from behind by facing away from it. I don't know why this works, but I am not complaining. That Stone Saber there was to make up for a Stone Saber I was supposed to cast at the end of the previous fight. I have one more set of enemies I intend to take out using Stone Saber. After that, I'm basically done killing normal enemies. Scroll slightly to the left in order to get everyone clumped up, at which point I can just do this, and the whole set is dead. Really fast grind there. If you want to get gold at this phase of the game, I suggest just repeating that sequence right there. This is a crystal orb that responds to the Air Blast spell. Air Blast is one of two awful spells that Sylphid has. The high damage spell that Sylphid has is, it costs 4 MP, and it has a ridiculously short animation, to the point where you can't even stun lock enemies by trying to chain cast it. It gets less bad once you get it up to level 2 because the animation changes somewhat, but then it gets bad again once you reach level 4 because the animation changes again. Kind of annoying. Anyway, let's go ahead and give the girl the whip back. I will need her to have it again in the future. And then as for the boy, I need the axe to get rid of these boulders. I will also gain some weapon experience on the axe just by virtue of holding it. The next couple of boss fights, for no apparent reason, award a whole lot of weapon experience to the boy as if he defeated a bunch of enemies. Also, we're supposed to talk with the king of Matango here before we proceed to the boss. We're not doing that because, as it turns out, I have a feeling I'm going to get clipped here. Nope, we're good. As it turns out, if you press the select button to swap your character, for your first frame of motion after that, you are able to move as if you are still an AI-controlled character. Which turns out to be very useful because if your weapons are not out, AI-controlled characters are able to walk through NPCs. So by mashing the select button, I was able to get through that guard. The reason this works in some locations but not in others is that the AI-controlled characters, aside from being able to walk through NPCs, are also not allowed. I need to focus a little bit here. Okay, this one is all cast, and then the next one is a first slide, swap characters, and I forgot to actually use a walnut, so I'll have to do that later. This also gave, by defeating that peddler there, I gave the sprite just barely enough. Girl. Okay. The trouble I had with the owls there was a result of the fact that owls are super aggressive against targets that are confused. As you can see, there's a whole lot of little things in this game, to the point where even with, like, a little over 2 hours to talk about it, I have a hard time going through everything. Alright, so I hacked the crystal orb there. The way I did that was by casting the freeze spell against it, and then the earth slide spell. The crystal orb simply checks what the most recent spell that was cast on it was. It does not check what the spell that was what the most recent spell that was cast by the person who hit it was. It does not actually check what the spell that hit it itself. So as a result, if I cast a bunch of freezes to practice that, simultaneously getting the sprite 1 level so that you can cast 1 more freeze per spell set, then that gives me the ability to finish off the cast with 1 Earth Slide, which is the by far worst spell. and then just leave it at that. That should kill. Oh, it didn't. Okay. Ah, crap. Now he's not on the screen. Scroll down a bit so he is. That should be sufficient there. And I don't need to refill my MP from here unless he somehow survives, which should not happen. It did not. Good. There we go. I used Freeze there at level 2 to deal damage to Great Viper. Great Viper is actually weak against the wind element, so I could have used the Sylphid magic set there. Unfortunately, though, the sprite's Sylphid spells kind of suck. Aside from Thunderbolt, which I already talked about being too short of an animation, the other spell is Air Blast, which has a reasonable 2 MP cost. Unfortunately, it's a projectile spell. Projectile spells have to have all 3 bolts hit the target before you're allowed to go do anything else. So that winds up slowing down the spell casting procedure by a lot. So I don't want to deal with that. I was able to circumvent that at the Crystal Orb by putting the sprite directly in the orb's face. Maybe I guess it's the other way around. But anyway, by smashing the 2 together, I was able to make sure that all of the bolts spawned directly on the Crystal Orb, so they didn't have to go do their usual loop-de-doos all across the screen in order to hit the target like they normally would. This is the last time I'm going to require the axe for a little bit here. There aren't a whole lot of places that have those boulders that can be chopped down, but obviously that was one. And now I am given an option of a couple places to go. I will go to Kakara first for kind of a non-intuitive reason. The first place I want to go is the Ice Country. Unfortunately, if I go to the Ice Country first, the Ice Country's cannon will not take me to Kakara because I have to go to Kakara from this cannon here first, because this is the cannon that will fail to take me to Kakara and instead leave me stranded in the desert in order to make this plot event happen. So we are now lost in the desert. We will have to get out of here by getting picked up by a boat, a sand ship, which I'm not exactly sure what that is. I guess someone was watching Star Wars Episode 6 or something. I don't know. Anyway, once we get picked up there, our party will split and then reform. Incidentally, if I had done the thing in the early game that skips picking up the girl, this is the point where the girl will mysteriously appear. She would appear at level 1 at that point because she wouldn't have gotten any experience prior to that point. She would quickly level up, though, because the enemies of this phase of the game, especially the bosses, give a lot of experience compared to the amount of experience we've gotten up to this point. There are a lot of reasons for me to want to keep the girl for the early game in this run, though. One of them is that any experience she has gained up to this point will be multiplied many times over later on, because her experience is going to get donated to the boy, and then the boy is going to redonate it back to the rest of the party using the wall glitch where I'll repeatedly kill them. That'll happen a lot later on. For now, I just need to reassemble the party. I'm on a sand ship controlled by the Republic. The Republic is the world's last line of defense against the encroaching machinations of the Empire. If this sand ship's crew is of any indication, the world is doomed. Please don't block me. Okay, thank you. Sometimes the guard that's wandering around can fit himself in that little corridor leading to the exit. If so, you just have to wait for him to leave. There is no recourse. So anyway, every character is assigned to do the task that they are least well equipped to do. Once we're all together, at that moment, the Empire attacks, at which point the brave Republic soldiers immediately surrender. We, of course, do not, so we will wind up fighting Geshtar, and we will try to save the day that way, although the sand ship itself is doomed. So this is Geshtar. He's the guy who unleashed Jabberwocky against us. Get used to seeing this bike. We're going to see it a couple more times after this. Notice that the sprite just inexplicably got a weapon level here. This is the second of 3 fights in the game that inexplicably award a bunch of experience weapon-wise for... It's directed at the boy, but the boy shares some of it with the rest of the team. So this has given the sprite weapon level 2, which means he can now participate in the weapon overcharge glitch also. And just in time, too. Because I was right about to head into this ice country, which features Boreal Face, which I will be able to one cycle if both the boy and the sprite manage to hit him at the same time. Not especially likely, but it could happen. Speaking of things that could happen, we're currently only about 30 seconds behind world record pace, so that feels good. A little bit of history of me running this game here for the past year. I was originally practicing this game, intending to run it for this marathon whenever it was originally scheduled for much earlier on in the year. Then it got obviously pretty delayed, and we're finally doing it now. But in the interim, I wound up showcasing this run at the online SGDQ event. While I was practicing for that event, I managed to finally get a new world record. Previous record being held also by me, but from like 2.5 years ago or something like that, back when I was, at that time, better at the game. So keeping pace with that feels pretty good. Anyway, we're now heading to Ice Country. This is a kind of scary location. It is scary enough that I am bothering with an armor upgrade. This armor upgrade also serves a secondary purpose in that it allows me to do the equipment trashing glitch again. For anyone who wasn't here for my explanation earlier, if I stand in the correct location on the screen, I can cause the game to try to unequip one of my consumable pieces of inventory. So in this case, by standing near this chimney, I can throw away something the boy has equipped and thereby cause the game to quote-unquote unequip my consumables 2 times. Oh wait, I forgot to... I better do that before heading into this room. I forgot to use Stone Saber. Kind of important that I do. So switch back to the sword. Now, please give us Stone Saber. Stone Saber actually activates as soon as the bolts leave. Didn't do that right. It actually activates as soon as the bolts leave the girl's hands. You don't have to wait for it to visually arrive at the target. Even though the palette change is associated with that, the actual effect is not. Didn't get through that room very smoothly, unfortunately. These howlers are very annoying. They attack very quickly. Their hitboxes are humongous. I can despawn a couple of them, but a lot of them I really can't. So in the upcoming room here, I am going to walk up, walk down, hopefully spawn a bunch of enemies, and hopefully, yes, I had success. I managed to not spawn any of the 3 howlers that are supposed to block you at the intersection there. So at this point, I am going to have both the sprite and the boy start to overcharge. And the girl, meanwhile, if I can find the right menu, will give herself a barrel, protect herself, and also distract the attacks from the enemy. So hopefully the enemy will dodge neither of the incoming attacks. That was too fast. So that's 1 hit. All right, he's dead. Sweet. 1 cycle. No guarantee I'll get that because each of my attacks at this point has somewhere around a 70% chance of hitting just through RNG. I needed both of them to land in order to get the 1 cycle there. I could get a second shot at a single cycle by missing both of my attacks, of course, but in any case, it wound up being pretty convenient. A large part of what made that easier to achieve this time was the fact that I managed to I was lucky enough for Boreal Face to spawn near me. There's 4 locations you can choose to unburrow at. And if he unburrows far away, it's a lot harder to get the team set up as it needs to be before he unburrows. Possible, just trickier. For reference, that trek through Ice Country was sufficiently awkward that I wound up losing 1.5 minutes over the world record, so a little unfortunate there. Oh well. That's the last you'll hear from me about the record, unless I actually get it at the end. One does not expect or even particularly try to get a new record during a marathon run. Not a good idea. Anyway, we met the Scorpion Army again there. They're the people that stole the Water Palace Mana Seed before and put it into Kilroy, that golem. That's not going to work, is it? Okay. Almost did. So this time they stole the Elemental Salamando, and we needed to collect him in order to get through the Fire Palace. We're also supposed to remain in this area in order to head all the way to the Ice Palace, which is where Santa lives. And no joke, actual Santa Claus is a character in this game. Unfortunately, he has been transformed into a monster. We are supposed to defeat that monster in order to pick up the Fire Palace Mana Seed, which we are then supposed to deliver to the Fire Palace. As it turns out, however, the Fire Palace Mana Seed, as far as the game mechanics are concerned, is only removed from the altar once you reach a particular room in the basement of the Fire Palace. I don't know why they do things that way, but because they do, it means that we can potentially avoid picking up the Fire Palace Mana Seed whatsoever by going up what is intended to be an exit-only ramp near the end of this dungeon here. I'm going to have to focus for a bit, because I'm going to use barrels to launch myself up the exit ramp. Pretty involved sequence. No individual step is very hard, but if you miss any one part of it, the whole thing doesn't work. And that should be it. All right, we're good. So, the reason that trick works is that the game does not have an animation associated with does not have an animation that is associated with healing like you normally do. So if you go and get healed while a barrel is upon you, your current momentum gets locked in because your animation is not one that would do anything about your momentum. So if everyone is moving upward at that moment, which the girl was moving up because I had control of her and I was holding up, the other characters, on the other hand, were moving up because they were trying to join up with the girl. Please cast a spell. Oh dear. Please cast a spell. There we go. Not yet. There we go. That should be good enough. Ah, the angle was all wrong. A little unfortunate there. There we go. This time he has cooperated. So that's a walk through walls that involves attacking a whip post. Shortly after you attack a whip post, all of your characters are allowed to walk through walls, just in case you are about to do the jump across the gap that the whip is supposed to achieve. I'm now doing another glitch that requires a bit of focus. I need to get through these stairs in time. I did not do it. Crap. Okay, missing that is really unfortunate. It means I now have to defeat Minotaur. You know what? I'm going to try something. I eventually need to restock my barrels anyway. I'm just going to do it now. Which should enable me to barrel the girl and then use her as protection here. I think the sprite's okay, but nope, it is not. The Royal Jam item has the convenient feature that it can actually heal targets that are at 0 HP, so long as they haven't been turned into a ghost yet. There's some stipulations to that, but you don't really have to worry about that. For now, just know that I have to deal with the Minotaur fight. I'm supposed to be able to skip this fight, which is a large part of why I no longer level up Sylphid at all. But unfortunately, because that didn't work out, I am now going to have to deal with this fight after all. And he's kind of annoying. He spends a lot of his time blocking. Overall, as far as Minotaur fights go, that was actually pretty good. It's just I'm not supposed to do the Minotaur fight at all. I'm suddenly worried about if I'm going to be at too high of an experience level. I don't think I am. I think this is okay. If I exceed 65,536 experience going into the wall glitch, that's actually a problem. Okay, so I am going to use the rope and then talk to the mana seed here. Regardless of who inputs the use the rope command, the character that actually does the animation is always the boy. I should split this. I exit here. There we go. So that was a little unfortunate, but the way the trick is supposed to work for skipping the Minotaur is I'm supposed to get into the stairway before the second instance of hitting the crystal orb with the freeze spell happens. That causes the freeze spell check to overwrite the event that's supposed to happen when I go through the room transition, which is me getting locked into the fight with the Minotaur. Unfortunately, because I was a little bit too slow in getting into the stairway, that meant I wound up having to fight the Minotaur anyway because that event did fire. Oh well. So now that I have completed the Fire Palace subplot, I am now able to advance to infiltrate the Empire itself. The Empire, at least as far as the towns we are able to visit within it, consists of South Town, which we are at right now, and the town which is to the north of South Town, which is predictably named North Town. These guys are not very creative. Anyway, here in Southtown, we meet with Mara, who tells us a secret password, which is supposed to get us through the secret passage through the sewer system, which is of course filled with a bunch of monsters, because why not? We're not actually going to give that password because we walked through the town in a way that prevented the guard that's supposed to block our progress from even appearing. At this point, I'm going to wait for a split, at which point I will have the sprite cast some magic. Thankfully, the blue drops did not move whatsoever, which will make it easier for me to get past them. Those blue drops are jerks. I was supposed to meet them in the Ice Palace, but of course I skipped that altogether. If I did meet them, I probably would have found out that taking damage from a blue drop is likely to cause your character to be turned into a snowman, which, you know, slows us down because snowmen can't move. Well, wound up happening anyway. Fun fact, if the boy has been turned into a snowman as you enter this cutscene that's coming up here, the game soft locks, which is pretty mean for a set of enemies that appears right before this cutscene. Anyway, you can also potentially, in that area there, permanently lose a party member by doing what we call the snowman abduction glitch, whether intentionally or not. If you use a medical herb to remove the snowman status while their damage numbers are still showing, for a little while, their graphics will still correspond to if they were snowmen, but they're still able to move around. If you cause the character to then do the pushing animation while they are a snowman, the game loads some glitchy animation data, which, if it persists for long enough, will eventually just delete the character from your party, which is pretty awful, so don't let that happen. At this point, we are going to go into the Northtown ruins. You may recognize the architecture here as being a palette swap of the Pandora ruins we encountered earlier. Thanatos once again is at work, and the girl's friend, Fauna, as well as her boyfriend, Diluc, are being used as the faces of the operation here. So we'll need to do something about that, which will of course involve going through a dungeon and then doing a couple of boss fights, because that's what you do in an action RPG. Anyway, each of these rooms is a little bit scary if I mess up. If I don't mess up, everything should be fine though. Okay, we're good for here. I need to walk, not run, through the room with the eyes. This prevents any of the eyes from happening to collide with our characters. The bats are escaped by just moving diagonally and then down. They are very scary once they activate, but they take a while to do so. I'm having to do 2 tries of the room with a mixture of slime enemies because I made a bit of a mistake there. Needs to go far enough down that I don't have to worry about... Oh, whoops. Made a mistake in that slime room, so we'll try again. I need to scroll the... Okay, that didn't happen. Not doing well in these slime rooms here. It's a bit unfortunate, but we should be able to progress from this point. Okay. So we're moving forward here. I needed to have someone with a melee weapon going into the room with the zombie. Right in our faces, because the whip actually has a minimum attack range. If you're right next to someone, the whip will not... If you're immediately next to someone, the whip will fail to... score a hit on them, which is actually the mechanic they use rather than actually something via the scripting engine. in order to make sure you cannot use the whip to connect with the post that you're right next to whenever there's a pair across a chasm. We're going to abuse that little detail later on in the game in order to make the whip post launch us in the wrong direction. There are very few places in this game where I'm going to use a whip post in the way it's supposed to be. And many cases where we'll be using it in kind of an abusive fashion. The imps are the scary enemies in this area. In order to despawn one of the imps that would normally be giving me trouble. Oh, didn't happen. Oh well. I'm supposed to despawn those imps by spawning 2 wizard eyes. I got the one that's supposed to be harder, but I didn't get the one that was supposed to be easier, which is a little odd. Incidentally, the girl has died here, which is fine by me, because the girl was not supposed to get experience from the Minotaur fight, so now she will fail to get experience from a different fight and thereby get me synced up with the amount of experience she's supposed to have, or at least close to it. This will be slightly less than she's supposed to have, but that's fine. Better too little than too much, oddly enough here. I probably didn't have to split my casts here. The sprite's already at 14 MP here? That's not normal. I wonder how that happened. Not complaining. And this should do it. I, once again, don't want to try to bother using overcharge attacks against this boss for a couple of reasons. First of all, if I accidentally killed the 2 side eyes before killing the middle one, because the AI is a little unpredictable when you use the overcharge here, that would cause a bit of a problem where the center eye would start using this telekinesis attack, which would interrupt any further attempts to use weapon overcharge hits. Also, I want magic experience for the sprite so that I can have level 4 magic to use against Vampire coming up here. Vampire is very hard to hit with the overcharge. It is Vampire and his palette swap Buffy later on are the 2 hardest bosses to handle in the multiple controller run, precisely because the multiple controller run never bothers to level up magic, and therefore can't use that as an alternative. Because I have, I'll be able to just blast him with magic and call it a day. But trying to hit him with physical attacks is hard because he spends most of his time either jumping around, which causes your allies to drop their aggro, or he'll just stay in the air, in which case you can't hit him with physical attacks whatsoever. So at this point, the girl is very temporarily removed from the party and then immediately returned. Which is fine, doesn't really matter. The party actually gets healed in the meantime, so even if I had the Midge Mallet, I wouldn't be able to de-mallet it before this fight. Now that I'm at level 4 with my magic, I am actually going to split my casts into 2 sets. Reason for this is that I cannot do more than 999 damage per set of spells. So I will need to do it in 2 sets, waiting long enough to separate the damage in order to make this work. Great. Miscounted there. Wound up working out anyway. some good damage rolls there, I think. Normally I have to do another 3 or so casts to finish off Vampire. It was also convenient that I headed in with the right amount of experience. I'm also a little worried that the boss explosion scrolling with the rest of the screen there might be a emulator error, because I don't remember seeing that in the normal game. I am, in fact, playing on emulator here. I did describe that at the beginning of the run, but that's a long time ago now. So, quick little recap. My SNES is busted. It does weird things with weird games. In this game, the ring menu doesn't work, which is a bad thing. So, anyway, because of that, I am using an emulator here, which means you just have to take me at my word that I'm not using any cheat codes. That is one of the drawbacks of the emulator. If you cheated on the emulator, there's really no way that anyone could know. So at this point, I'm going to intentionally kill off the boy. Kind of a weird thing to do, but this will achieve the Metal Mantis skip. There's supposed to be a boss fight where we get thrown into an arena after meeting with a fake truce agreement with the Emperor. So, by killing off the boy, I cause him to be a ghost, which whenever a character is a ghost, their weapon is never out, because it would be weird for a ghost to be carrying a weapon. As it turns out, a AI character that does not have its weapon out can always walk through NPCs, even in regions where normally an NPC would be an impassable barricade. So, in order to go into a section of the Emperor's castle that I'm not supposed to be able to reach yet, I will trick the strange pathing AI into traveling upward past the guards here. This should be a good position here. Here we go. Swap to the sprite. Now see, the boy has moved upward. I now swap control to the boy and move upward also. So since the boy, while he was dead, was past the guards, and then I revived him, I was able to carry myself past the guard up those stairs. And now I'm going through a section of the dungeon that is supposed to have enemies at the time I reach it, but because I never went through the fake truce thing, we're still in the fake truce mode of this dungeon, so there are no enemies. I also skipped the Metal Mantis fight and skipped straight to the fight against Geshtar again. It's basically the same fight as before, and in fact, this version of the battle has an even lower magic defense than the previous, which is kind of strange. And he has almost the same amount of HP too. It's like 200 more. So it's a little weird that that's how things are going here, but I'm not complaining. I will be able to defeat him with just a few spell casts. He does have more than 1,000 HP, so I will have to split my casts in order to take him out. The third cast here is probably not even needed, but it could be, depending on luck. I switched the boy over to the Spike Knuckle weapon in order to pick up some experience there. This is the final boss that I will be fighting that generates a bunch of inexplicable weapon experience. So at this point, we are done with the purely linear part of the game. The game is now going to award us Flammy. We rescued Flammy back in Matango. However, at that point, he was too small. However, in the past, like 30 minutes, he has grown to full size, which is frightening. Can't imagine just how much food he had to eat to make that happen. So at this point, I can go through the rest of the game in kind of whatever order I want, thanks to some glitches I have that'll allow me to walk through walls and that sort of thing. So the first task is going to be to set up to do the wall glitch. The wall glitch will allow me to reflect magic off of an enemy that has protected itself from magic using the wall spell in order to defeat my own allies, which will award my characters an amount of experience equal to the amount of experience the killed character has ever generated through the entire game, mod 65,536. Thanks to the mod there, I can't get too ridiculous, but I do have a proper amount of experience here that I can kill first the girl one time, and then I'm going to repeatedly kill the boy. And this will award around 60,000 experience to the girl and the sprite per kill, repeatedly. I'm going the wrong way. I need to go this way. I need to stop by Gaia's Navel one last time. We went here a lot in the early game. Let's go ahead and swap over to the axe now. This is where the dwarf village is, and it turns out that this is where you pick up the Midge Mallet. The Midge Mallet allows you to turn your characters into pygmies, which pygmied characters cast magic faster than non-pygmied characters do, which is one big reason to have them pygmied. Another big reason is that the Midge Mallet interrupts the processing of damage, including the processing of being transformed into a ghost after you've taken damage. So, in doing so, the Midge Mallet allows me to decide who lives and who dies. It allows me to decide who dies because characters who are pygmied have 75% less defense than they normally would. So let's go ahead and pygmy the girl, and then get her into this room here. I want her to take one hit here. She has. This procedure is really precise. I need to do it exactly right. So I'm going to stop commentary for a little bit here to focus. I am actually very concerned about the sprite. Okay, there we go. That will fix it. The sprite's charged. Really? Okay. Why did the girl get healed? She leveled up off of that one enemy kill? Wow, okay, that's really unfortunate. That doesn't usually happen. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that has never happened before. And I'm not even at a GDQ right now. Another low damage roll. This is going to be really not a lot of experience to gain here in the end. Okay. Zombify the boy. Cast another spell. Repeat. And it didn't even... Oh, dear. Wow, this is going very badly. And now he's at full HP and may not die. In fact, he did not. And I'm out of wall charges. Oh dear. Okay, so having to kill the Minotaur, I think, is responsible for me having too much experience here, which has messed up the process by making me not actually one-shot the boy, because he ate the boy who had too much experience. So I have to set up all over again, unfortunately. This is... yeah, that's too far. I think that's correct. I need to position myself very precisely, such that only the boy is a valid target here. Okay, now this should be a proper setup. As long as I'm here, I'm just going to keep going. It's going to give me substantially more experience than I'm supposed to have, which is, you know, better than the alternative. I'll stop here. Okay. Well, that was a slight disaster there, but we're ready to move on now. I do need to do one equipment trash, right? Right, okay. Whoops. I already equipment trashed for the for replenishing my barrels, so I'm good to go on that front. I should be good to go for the rest of the game as far as those resources are concerned. Well, that felt bad, but we're back in business now. Okay. Next up, I need to walk through walls with the girl. Once again, I'm going to stab a whip post to give myself temporary walk-through walls. I'm just going to hope the girl travels in the direction I want her to as she's trying to combat B. After she's across the ledge, I gather the party by tagging the whip post. And the rest of the party can walk through walls in order to join. The next whip post is circumvented by using the midge mallet in order to cause the girl to now have the punch attack animation, which does not have the minimum attack range that the normal whip animation does. And thereby, I am able to jump upward towards that other whip post. And I'm clearly not supposed to be able to do that. Next, I walk through walls at Jock's Trial by using the charged sword attack, which the level 1 charge attack is a jump slash, which moves you forward. The game allows your party to walk through walls as it gathers to talk to Jock. The jumping animation causes me to overshoot and enter into the stalagmite region. So, skipping past there gets us past what is supposed to be the thing that requires us to do the Palace of Darkness, which we visited but did not complete, as well as the Gold Tower, which we have not done yet but will, as well as the Moon Palace, which we have not done yet but will, as well as also the, what I call the Tasnica plot cul-de-sac. It's honestly the low point of the game, storytelling-wise and game mechanics-wise. but we don't have to deal with it, so that's great. Okay, needs to be a little bit careful about exact... Oh, crap. Oh, crap. The sprite got himself stuck. One unfortunate thing about being pygmied is that it causes your characters to become really aggressive, which tends to get them killed, which is okay because I'm trying to get killed in that region. Unfortunately, I got 2 killed. I was trying to keep the sprite alive by causing his first hit to arrive a little later than the others, but he wound up getting chain stunned, so I wasn't able to revive the boy. The way that fight works is that the boy, if the boy dies, the boy's doppelganger dies. If the girl dies, the girl's doppelganger dies, etc. Unfortunately, I allowed too many of my characters to die all at once, so I wasn't able to have a character still alive at the end. You can also just defeat the enemies. Unfortunately, they have ridiculous magic defense. It is a rare opportunity where if you have the Evil Gate spell, it's kind of useful, because the Evil Gate spell doesn't work properly on bosses. It's hard-coded to only do 1 damage. Apart from that, it is a gravity-type spell, if you are familiar with other Final Fantasy games. Okay, so now the boy is out. So that means I can get the other 2 characters killed as quickly as they can. There we go. Unfortunately, redoing the jock area is like a 2-minute or so time loss, maybe 3. But we're still on pace to meet estimate, so we're in good shape. All right. Next up, it is time for me to pick up the Lumina spell set. I don't actually need to do this as far as completing the game is concerned. I could just, now that I've done Jock's thing, I could just plow straight on through to the end game. However, if I do that, I will have to deal with Buffy without having magic that can handle him. Buffy has too much magic defense for my level 4 freeze to do anything, so I'm going to need a higher level freeze than that, or a better element of magic to use. I'm going to go the better element of magic option. Buffy and Thanatos both happen to be weak against the light element, which is what I'm going to go pick up now. It's in the gold tower, which I needed to pick up the key for, and I have now. Unfortunately, I will have to defeat 2 bosses to get through this tower. It's very short as far as normal dungeoning is concerned. Literally just 1 floor to go through per boss. However, there are 2 bosses, and they're both kind of annoying. I do need the boy to start charging again, so he will. This boss is a palette swap of Spiky Tiger. Some of his attacks are different, but the basic concept is the same. I'm going to stuff the girl into his mouth to use as a pacifier, protecting her by virtue of placing her underneath a barrel. So long as Spiky Tiger, as long as Blue Spike here chooses to stay on the ground, he will just gnaw on the girl, which turns out to work out pretty well. Unfortunately, he has chosen to go on the high ground now, And as long as he's on the high ground, I can't do anything to him. My weapons don't hit him there. I could try to do a really complicated swap over to a bow and arrows, but it winds up being ridiculously slow. And I don't even get to do full damage because this game has a problem handling overcharge attacks when it comes to projectile weapons. Projectile weapons are kind of cool in that if you charge them up, they do more damage, and they travel farther. That's kind of neat that they thought to make that work. But if you're doing an overcharge attack, something goes wrong with the calculation of how far the thing is supposed to go, and oftentimes it'll just not go anywhere, and then you can't actually hit anything with it because the projectile didn't move. Anyway, we have eventually taken care of the blue spike fight. There's one more fight to be had. It is Gorgon Bull. He is a palette swap of Minotaur, and he behaves very similarly, which should not mean anything to you because you should not have seen that battle, but unfortunately you did. So now I've got to deal with that bit of frustration a second time rather than just once. If I happen to hit Gorgon Bull as he's doing his spawning animation here, nope, I did not. It needs to be more than 0 damage. If I interrupt him, he would actually not change his palette to his normal palette. He would be stuck in his initial statue palette, which would be neat, but didn't happen this time. Getting good versus bad luck on this guy is particularly important. As you can see, he's got these mean attacks, and he also does a lot of blocking. When he is and is not blocking is unfortunately random, so I don't really get to stop it. I'm trying to make sure that if he does his power bomb wrestling move that picks you up and slams you down, I want to try to make it so that those attacks come at a time when none of my allies, at a time and a place where none of my allies are in range to be hit by it. Alright. All things considered, that was a pretty fine Gorgon Bull fight. It would have been nice if the sprite wasn't taken out of commission early. But overall, I would say that was pretty good. Gorgon Bull can go very wrong. Once his claws come out, once he's below half HP, at that point, he can start charging across the room, and then I have to reset up every time that happens, and that's pretty inconvenient. So now I have Lumina. I will need level 2 on Lumina's magic in order to properly deal damage to in order to properly deal damage to Buffy. So to that end, I am going to be having the girl cast a lot of magic. I've also pygmied her so she can cast the magic more quickly. I need the bolts to come out from her spells before the screen has completely faded to the next region. Not actually sure if I got it there. I am using a higher MP cost spell than I could use here, because the higher MP cost spell actually gives me a barrier that protects me from physical damage, and I am soon going to want to kill off my characters again. So in order to facilitate that, I am going to make sure I don't cast that protective spell. I've got one more cast's worth of MP here. So I will have her cast, and then in the next room, I will give her MP instead of having her cast. I'm saving a little bit of time on practicing all this magic here by doing a room transition each time after I'm casting. Otherwise, I have to wait for the spell animation and all that stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and give the girl some MP. As it turns out, picking up the Luna spell set requires having Lumina in tow. So that's why we did this in this order. I think I got that. I'm actually not sure. I should be a little over level 1 by the time I'm through this area here. Somewhat annoyingly, Luna actually takes precedence over Lumina. Sorry, Luna takes precedence over Lumina. Those two names are a little unfortunately similar here. So there's the first level up there. Once again, I'm going to have to restore my MP. Do that here. Give me MP. You do need the green numbers to show up before you leave the screen in order for you to actually get the MP. Fun fact, Karen over there, the guy who ferried me across the Star Sea, he doesn't just look like a Robin Foot. As far as the game's coding is concerned, he actually is one. So that means, among other things, that you can cast magic on him. And in fact, my glitchless, quote-unquote, run of this game deals MP from Karen using the MP Absorb spell that you learn from Luna for the sprite. So at this point, the game is going to get even weirder. I'm going to intentionally lose to the next fight, which is against Iga Grapalon, but we call him Watermelon for reasons that should be obvious. First, I stopped by the Ice Palace, which is a dungeon that I was supposed to have gone through before, but didn't. Because of the shenanigans with the Fire Palace. What this means is that Santa Claus is still in charge of a dungeon. Santa Claus, as it turns out, will revive the boy and kick you out of his dungeon if you manage to die while you're inside of it. Because he's, not all evil. Or something like that. So anyway, net result here is that that game over shield is still active because I never left the area properly, per se. I left via Flammy, which is not something I'm supposed to have at a time when I'm in the dungeon, so they didn't account for the possibility. Scram! So, that gave me a game over shield, which I have immediately made use of. And now, I'm going to make use of a somewhat famous glitchy location here. I'm going to land at the Frosty Forest Neko. And I will save my game here. This save game is glitched in that it does not know where it is. If you remember way back to the beginning of the game, you may recall that I said that save files record where it was that you entered the room in which you made the save. I did not enter that room normally. I entered it via Flammy. So that information was not recorded. So if I use LR select start and I hold it for at least a second, and then I load that file, the file data will be loaded, but the location will be set to wherever I was before I did the reset. I am now going to use that in order to teleport myself into the intro scene with the waterfall way back at the beginning of the game. For unknown reasons, that room has emergency code for if you wind up there at an unexpected time, where it'll put everyone into what we call cutscene mode, where they are invisible. And there are some extra properties with cutscene mode. Specifically, so long as at least one character is in cutscene mode, all characters are allowed, if they like, to walk through walls. Also, so long as a character is in cutscene mode, if they face left and then press the action button, regardless of how far away an entity is, you will be able to talk with it. So, by aborting the fight against Watermelon a while ago, I have left Sheets in this room ready to be talked to. He doesn't have anything to say, but simply talking with him does activate the event system and thereby allow characters to walk through walls. I am going to convince my ally here, and it's AI, to walk exactly far enough through walls here, hopefully. Nope, didn't get it that time. This leg is a lot trickier than the previous one, because I have to get it exactly right, or else she either overshoots or undershoots walking through. So there we go. We have now gone through the back side of the Grand Palace. And I am hoping that the wolf will cooperate here. I need to use this wolf to help me walk through walls. He is in the position I want him to be. Or was. Okay, there we go. And now I attack this whip post, which will once again allow the girl to walk through walls. This time she's going to hopefully get your butt over there, wolf. There we go. She walks through walls by virtue of trying to run away from the wolf that I pushed right into her face. And now, unfortunately, I can no longer stun that wolf very easily. Get your butt over here, girl. Okay, that's good. Now she's in here. If I press this button exactly twice, I have failed to press the button that is supposed to be involved in getting me here. So I'm now in a strange state where the boss after the one that I logically should be fighting in this room is available, but the boss that's in this room is not available. I now need to use a walnut. Okay. And that should be good to go. Overall, as far as trips through the Grand Palace is concerned, that went pretty well. Grand Palace skips are very particular. Anything going wrong often means I have to redo a whole large swath of it. So for the upcoming fight, I have to deal with Hexus. Hexus's top portion is the part that can actually take physical damage, whereas the bottom portion is the part that deals damage to you. So I want my party to be above. I will once again have the girl pretend she's playing Metal Gear Mana, and she will block Hexus's attacks by sitting in the barrel. Hopefully, my allies will not be so dumb as to blunder into the line of fire. Also, For some reason, Hexus will occasionally become invulnerable to physical attacks for reasons that we do not know. In an effort to combat that possibility, I am using one instance of magic damage against her, which makes her able to take physical damage again. She could still possibly just evade the attacks just by random chance. That is unfortunately still a thing that happens. Unfortunately, the sprite has lined up in a place where I don't want him to be. Incidentally, the gender of the sprite is not obvious. Different versions of the game are in disagreement with each other as to the sprite's gender. The recently created remake of this game goes out of its way to be specifically genderless, regardless of how, whether the sprite's being referred to collectively or not. The sprite is always referred to using they as the pronoun. They, their. Just to avoid having to commit on gender. As I understand it, avoiding referring to people by gender is a little bit easier in the Japanese language than in English. But in any case, that Hexus fight went fine. Obviously, I would prefer it if the first 4 hits all land and then she just goes down immediately, but that's a bit tall of an ask. At the beginning of this next fight, I get a little bit of free time as I'm waiting for the boss to bring about its own doom. So here I am going up against Mech Rider 3. This is the last time, thankfully, that we will be here fighting him. However, it is not the last time we'll be in this room. We'll see this room again as we pass through right at the end of the game, but we're going to be booted off of the Mana Fortress in a bit. Right now, that is, in fact, where we are. Alright, so I do have level 2 experience on Lumina now, as I intended. So that'll help for fighting the bosses in the Mana Fortress in a bit. For now, Mech Rider 3 has a bit of an unfortunate problem where his AI tells him to do things that he can't. His AI tells him to get onto the same horizontal plane as the rest of my party. Well, unfortunately, we're on the very bottom. He is floating. He can't join us. So he won't, obviously. I don't know why I did the dashing attack there. I do not appreciate the fact that he did. I also don't know why I acquired a experience level there. That's kind of strange. A weapon experience level. Mech Rider fights are always a little bit glitchy in that regard. Anyway, another thing the boss tries to do is give himself the speed up buff. Unfortunately, he tries to do that after he's already given himself the wall buff, which reflects his speed up cast, so he never gets sped up. Because he never gets sped up, he winds up never doing his scariest attack, which is called like Disruptor Wave or something, which would totally one-shot any target that it targeted here, because I do not have particularly great armor at this point. I guess it's as good armor as I could have, but still, the attacks are insane. There's one more armor upgrade that you could purchase in this game, but I am not going to do that. It's too much of a detour. And it's not part of my standard route, so I don't want to mess everything up by doing it. I was just now thinking about doing it for marathon safety, but I don't think I will. I will, however, for marathon safety, save the game. Because if I die in the Mana Fortress, that is very unfortunate, and there are some enemies that can do that. Let's visit a place that you would not normally see in a speedrun. In order to make that safety save. Normally, you would never see Mandala here. This is the town that is next to the mountain, and I am going to the mountain next anyway, so if I recall, the inn is up this way. The Glitchless Run visits here a couple times, or at least once anyway. Not even resting in the inn, just want to make a save. All right. And even though I'm going just a little bit down the mountain from here, I am going to use the Flammy Drum. As it turns out, walking down the stairs on the left side here is awful. So I'm going to circumvent that by going ahead and just summoning Flammy. So next up, I am supposed to go to Pure Lands, which is a very scary place with 6 bosses, I think. It's a lot of bosses. We're not doing that. Instead, we're going to pretend we have boomerang experience. How are we going to do that? Well, if I have numbers on the boy while he has the boomerang equipped, and then swap to the sword, he now has the sword equipped, but it looks like the boomerang. Why do I want the boomerang? Well, as it turns out, the boomerang's second level of charge animation is the only attack in the game that can enable me to hit the whip post after I have summoned Flammy. This means that the game has queued up the whip post checking event and is going to do that instead of checking whether I'm even allowed to be in the Mana Fortress yet. So, in so doing, I have avoided the barrier, which is supposed to be the thing that forces you to deal with the Mana Fortress. Sorry, the Pure Lands before going to the Mana Fortress. So, here we are. Slight left shift hopefully gets rid of the tsunamis. It did. There's some blue swamp goo looking monsters called tsunamis that can appear in this area, and they are actually very scary if you let them do their thing. So I'd rather they just not spawn at all. To the extent that I can, I will make use of diagonal motions in this region in order to try to despawn enemies. Unfortunately, I did get a tsunami set over here. This set, as long as I manage to push this button and then get out fast enough, it'll be okay. But once they start chain casting spells, it can be hard to get away from them. As you can see, they one-shot me. The amount of the sheer degree of upgrade that you get, not actually sure if it's worth reviving the sprite here or not. I don't really need him for the upcoming fight. I need the boy, but I do not need the girl. I think I'm just going to let him stay dead. Leave myself with an extra cup of wishes, just in case something goes wrong. Later on. Later portions of this dungeon tend to be scarier. Okay, with the sprite unable to get past there, that has actually become a problem. I do need the boy alive. I'm worried that guy may actually hit me. He did not. Sweet. Okay, so a bit of conversation in chat I'm seeing regarding the endgame grind. There are various enemies in the final dungeon that will either drop a weapon orb for a particular weapon or a particular type of final armor that can't even be purchased anywhere. The armor is the common drop. The weapon orb is the rare one. So the way that works out is there are 2 weapons in the game that you can never normally get up to level 8, which is the supposed cap. But there is actually a level 9 for each weapon. The sword's level 9 brings it up to the mana sword, which is not supposed to be a thing you can actually do. Via straight-up orb upgrades. But if you manage to hack your way, or, you know, glitch your way or whatever, into having enough sword orbs, then it works fine. You can actually upgrade that way, and that just works. This should be okay. I'm going to do one last equipment trash here before I'm out of this fight. So I'm now up to a full set of walnuts again, which will be enough for the whole rest of the game. And I kind of thought that I was going to kill there. It did not. And now the boy's dead again. Brilliant. That sounds about right, Yunos. The damage upgrade going from Grand Palace enemies to the Pure Lands enemies is massive. If you don't have Nico's awesome gear, you will get demolished. Unless you can manage to avoid all of their hits, which is technically possible, but let's just say that in a speedrun in practice, I usually put on some barrels and do some Metal Gear mana at that point in the game. Whenever I'm doing a glitchless speedrun, I should say. Which is an interesting animal. A glitchless speedrun of this game is, in my opinion, easier to execute than this run you're seeing here. However, it is much less reliable. Things can go very wrong. And if they do, you just die. Here, if things go wrong, you lose some time fiddling with some extra glitches to make it right. There, if things go wrong, that's it, you're done. Because you never buy armor. Basically, you never have the money for serious armor at any point. So I'm going to do some weird stuff here, trying to get my party positioned in exactly the way I want it to be. You'll notice I'm just burning through walnuts like it's nobody's business. I'm just trying to keep my characters from moving for a little bit. No, girl, stay still, stay still. Okay, boy, move down. Move further down, please. I think we can. I'm afraid I may not have gotten the setup exactly right. If I get the setup exactly right, then not only will my characters be trapped, which is mandatory, but furthermore, the 2 targets that will be selected by Dread Slime will be the sprite and the boy. I'm afraid I may have gotten him to target instead the girl and the sprite, which is a little harder for me to work with. We'll find out soon enough. Dread Slime is very unusual as far as enemies in this game go, because he will target whoever happens to be the farthest person from him. Because he's constantly going towards the farthest target, that kind of moves him towards the center of mass of your party, sort of. There's some further quirks to that. But anyway, I have to use overcharge attacks here because nothing short of level 3 Shade will even inflict damage to this guy, magic-wise. And I never even got Shade. That was one dungeon that I just completely skipped. I'm going to have to revive the sprite here. I don't have to use a Cup of Wishes if I get on it with a Royal Jam in time. And there's my answer regarding whether the girl was in the right position or not. She was not. It's really hard to get everything in the right spot. I actually did it right in practice yesterday. One of the few things that did go right in practice yesterday. But I am unsurprised that it didn't wind up working out. I'm frequently canceling damage here with the Midge Mallet, causing any quote-unquote beneficial effect to occur will interrupt. The sprite's actually... I'm actually far enough away now that the sprite no longer wants to release his attack. That's partially why I need to get everything positioned exactly right. He's at least still charging, but he is no longer unleashing the attack voluntarily. I'm having to take control of him to make that happen. This guy has a lot of HP. It's close to 5,000, I think. I think it's 4,800. I could be off on that. This guy has a weird feature where he will keep getting larger as he takes hits. And this is kind of the thing that makes the fight hard to deal with. If you are within his goop, you are not allowed to move towards the center. You're always allowed to flee, but you are never allowed to return towards the middle. And that's what potentially allows you to even get soft locked here, since I don't have the... Yeah, didn't get the proper charge level there. I overcharge. If you go over 128 charge levels, your charge damage actually resets, and I was a little late there. You may recall that at one point I actually cast Moon Energy here. That allows me to score a critical hit that is guaranteed. Each level that you get in Luna increases the number of critical hits that are guaranteed in that way by 1. And the reason to bother with that is that normally the maximum damage you can deal with an attack is 999 minus their defense power. The defense power is subtracted after the 999 cap is put in. However, the way critical hit damage is calculated gets around that. So even though the total force of my attack was not increased, the effective damage output was. You'll see me do that also against the Mana Beast in order to get up to 999 damage strikes, hopefully, assuming everything goes right, which it may well not. This area of the fortress is the final normal dungeon segment in the game, and it features a pretty large number of pretty annoying enemies. These crabs aren't so bad. The Terminators have some blind spots on their attacks, but they will one-shot me. The wolves will come close to one-shotting me. I don't think they'll one-shot the boy, but they will one-shot the sprite, something like that. These ninjas are really mean, but the first thing the ninjas do is generally giving themselves Stone Saber. So as long as I'm out of the way before that happens, everything's all right. All right, set up for the final couple of battles here. First fight here is against Thanatos. This was the villain that has captured the girl's boyfriend. And we get some story here about apparently Diluc was born in darkness and raised in light, and that makes him perfect to be used as a body to take over the world. Thanatos possesses his body, but Diluc retaliates by murdering himself. Which leaves us to have to take out Dark Lich itself in spirit form. Dark Lich has 666 HP. Whoa. And he has kind of an interesting AI where he will alternate between physical and magic attacks as long as he's above ground. If he starts going below ground, that's very bad, and I don't want to see that. Not because it stops me from hitting him with magic, but because it causes the game to lag as he starts doing this transparency animation thing. So hopefully I will keep up my chain casting enough that he never gets an opportunity to do that. As long as I don't lose count of my spell casts, I'll be fine. The fight should end a little while after I reach level 5 experience with Lumina. This level 5 experience will make Lightsaber very powerful. You may remember me using Stone Saber earlier in the game. You would think that Stone Saber would cause my attacks to become Earth Elemental, and Lightsaber would cause my attacks to become Light Elemental. There is code in the game to enable that, but for some reason, a debug flag was left in that leaves that feature disabled. I don't know why they did that, but they did. In any case, a saber still does come with a slight damage buff, and I need every damage buff I can get in order to cause my normal attack swings to do full damage against the Mana Beast, which is the final fight coming up after this. That fight will feature the fully upgraded Mana Sword, which will be a bright green color as opposed to kind of the dark green that I have on the boy. Also, by the way, notice that the boy's sword and the sprite's sword are actually different colors. Reason for this is that only the boy's sword actually got updated. The sprite's glitchy alternate sword that he has did not get updated, so it's still the broadsword, whereas the I think it's called the Herald Sword is what the boy has equipped right now. I want to say this will kill. Yep. All right. Nearing the end now. I will briefly visit this grid here to shoo away the level up messages. And now it's time for the final fight. If you recall, during the early game, I was gaining weapon experience, but not to full levels. That was in order to make the Mana Sword, when summoned, more powerful. This buff is attached to the Mana Magic spell. The Mana Magic spell causes the sword to become the Mana Sword, but it only lasts for a period of time based on my Dryad magic level. I, up until this point, have not even had Dryad magic and therefore don't have any levels with it. Instead, I'm going to use a glitch in order to lock in the Mana Sword, which will be done shortly after I... here we go. Do another more minor glitch in order to skip the cutscene that spawns the Mana Sword. You may notice I now have the bright green Mana Sword, which is an incredibly powerful weapon that will help me to defeat the Mana Beast quickly. But it's on a short time limit, And in fact, the time limit is so short that the cutscene that normally plays before it comes out lasts longer than the duration of the sword. So we've skipped the cutscene by teleporting before the cutscene kicked in. Afterward, I'm going to swap to the girl and have her lightsaber the sword. The lightsaber spell is going to blow out the variables that are supposed to keep track of when the mana sword is supposed to dissipate. So, as long as I do it quickly enough, that will immediately give me a much more powerful weapon that is permanent, or at least it'll last as long as that lightsaber does. At this point, I'm practicing Luna. I want Luna to be up at level 1 so that I can properly deal with the Mana Beast in hopefully one cycle. We'll see if that happens or not. Not what I wanted. Whoops. The animation of the Lucid Barrier protected me from the first hit, and then the barrier itself protected me from the second. So at this point, refresh this one last time, and then do this, and then I should be good to go. Swap control to the boy. And now the sprite will cast one Acid Storm to reduce his defense power by a lot. Acid Storm isn't really a consideration for a lot of the game. However, for the final fight here, it's quite useful. What I need to attack first. Now use Moon Energy. I get 2 automatic crits per Moon Energy cast. I want to time it so that while I'm waiting for the Moon Energy animation to go through, my stamina is recovering, and there we go. Final boss is beaten. Timing will end once the party gathers after the boss is done. So... time. Okay, that went quite well, I would say, for a marathon run. This is about 10 minutes slower than my world record, which I got somewhere around a month ago now, but still 10 minutes faster than estimate. And for having taken various safeties for marathon, with honestly me being a little bit rusty here, I would say this went pretty well. Got to showcase basically all the things I wanted to showcase. And yeah, if you didn't feel like you had an information overload about Secret of Mana before, it is my hope that you do now. This game is very arcane if you choose to make it so. There's a lot of depth in this game, and I really like the fact that this game's glitches tend to add rather than subtract to the level of complication involved. So yeah, really quite enjoyed this. Thanks for letting me join in for this charity event. And yeah, take care. Have a good day. And if anyone is inspired to try out Secret of Mana, just poke me and I'll direct you to the appropriate Discord.